The Motivational Mindset Podcast with Switch Motivation. Hello and welcome to the Motivational Mindset Podcast. My name's Richard Knight, and this week I've been talking to Bevis Moynan, who's a performance breakthrough coach, and we've been talking about all things NLP, motivation, scar tissue and golf. Enjoy.
So I'll start with the why. The why I do what I do. So I'm Director of Magenta Coaching Solutions, which is a coaching and training company. We've been in the personal development space, or I've been in the personal development space ever since 2010, which is where the why came from, really. So I went on a training course in 2010 to become a better manager and better leader and to progress my management and leadership career. And I came off the course and set up a coaching business. Had a real 360 kind of degree turnaround in terms of my mindset, awareness of what motivated me, awareness of my values, and also awareness of what had been holding me back in terms of limiting belief, fear of failure, belief wasn't good enough, which stemmed from my old sporting days, interestingly. So yeah, that was kind of the why. I left that course. I never intended to coach. I was very dour, actually, very cynical. I thought life coaching was, well, there would have been a swear word in there. I'm from Yorkshire originally, so I was very dour and very cynical about this stuff, and actually had a huge personal breakthrough, and then left the course feeling like I owed it to other people to help support them. So that's where it came from, really.
Yeah. And you mentioned sort of limiting beliefs and things like that. It's the NLP side of things and the mapping and timeline therapy that you're currently involved in. Is that right?
Yeah, so that was the basis of my one-to-one work back in 2010. I've been seeing clients, helping people in that way for the last 14 years. I guess the shift there is the sorts of clients I've been working with, but also that since 2013, I've also been training other people in NLP and timeline therapy, and as we know, motivational mapping as well. So part of it is about my own work one-to-one with clients, which I love. I can never imagine not doing that because it's good for me. And what motivates me, and part of it is it's equally as rewarding seeing other coaches, consultants go out there and make a real impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of your currently what you do, I think we'll move on to that in a little bit. But as I mentioned when we first came on here, this is the Motivational Mindset Podcast. So motivation for you, you've got a really good insight into that now from what you do. How has that changed? You mentioned that sort of your sporting history and some issues that may have brought up for you in terms of not being good enough. That would be really interesting just to delve a little bit into, because I think there may be a lot of people out there going, yeah, absolutely. You've got that imposter syndrome, all of those sort of things where people are saying, well, I won't go for that because I don't think I'm quite good enough. In fact, I know I'm not. I won't go for that job because, well, I can't do that one thing out of the list of 20. I can't do that one thing, so therefore I won't go for the job. So how did that work for you then? How did your motivation change from those years and years ago to where it is now?
Yeah, so you just described me, really. So yeah, I was that person who took the safe job, who I mean, everybody. I did a degree in sports science at Loughborough University, and I ended up managing a leisure centre. Yeah, and so I was managing a leisure centre. I was playing semi-professional cricket, being paid to play cricket the weekend. I think everybody outside of me would have said, "Oh, Bevis is living his best life. He's doing what he's meant to be doing," because the path seemed preordained. But internally, I didn't feel comfortable at all, and I didn't really know why I didn't feel comfortable. And obviously that particular course in 2010 where I become aware of the scar tissue. I mean, I had a cricket county trial for Nottinghamshire whilst I was at Loughborough that was going to be at Loughborough, and I didn't turn up. I was running an imposter syndrome, self-sabotage pattern at the time. And really that's where I'm a big believer in Dharma, which is that our deeper purpose in life comes from often our biggest negative events. And often the people who are most fulfilled in life use that as fuel to help other people with the things that they previously struggled with. So pretty much my life in the last 14 years has been helping people to avoid making the same mistakes I did and to make good decisions linked to their values, linked to what fuels them. And it's interesting because I actually avoided working in sport to begin with, because it was too raw. And I didn't see that at the time. I remember the guy who trained me was going, "Oh, we could go," and he was a big cricket fan. He's like, "Oh, we can go and visit county cricket sides together, and we can go." He was really keen to work with me and collaborate with me, but I wasn't interested because it was still too raw at that time. So there was a bit more of the healing journey was required, and now, um, I mean, golf's more of my passion than cricket these days, and actually I love being able to work in that space, as well as with business owners. But there's something very enjoyable about helping people in that way.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. You mentioned the sports science side of things. I did the sports science degree over in Chester,
Yeah,
other side of the country, and
yeah,
I started my career in being a PE teacher,
yeah,
and that didn't quite sit right. It was something that I thought that I should do. I love sport, love sport. I always played sport, doing all of that marvelous stuff. But actually, I love helping people improve around the motivation, all that sort of thing. But I got it was a bit mixed messages at the time because I thought sport, helping people put the two together, perfect. What a great life that would be. That's got to be the way to do it, hasn't it? But it wasn't for me. And actually, I had a similar sort of thing in terms of probably not quite as much of an epiphany in terms of moving on, because I just went off and said, right, I've got to go and try something else. I've got to go and give something else a go. Kick that pattern or that behavior, just give it a nudge away
yeah,
from the normal track that it's going down and try and
yeah,
move that. And that, in terms of the motivation levels, has quite a significant impact. So it's really interesting to hear how that worked for you.
yeah.
So in terms of that motivation that you have now for what you do, uh, does that, how do you, I'm trying to get my words out here. How much of an impact does that have on your everyday life because you've realized or you've made those choices?
Hmm. So
You know,
it's I mean, I think it's a I mean, we know the statistics on motivational engagement, so I'm not going to dive into those, but it's a sad fact that a lot of people in the UK aren't fulfilled in work and aren't engaged in what they're doing. So it's a real pleasure and privilege to be able to wake up every day and do what I love. I mean, and it's easy to forget that when you've been doing it for over a decade. But it really is a pleasure and privilege to do that. But of course, motivation waxes and wanes over the course of a decade. It changes, it waxes and wanes, and I think it's important to. One of the things I realised during lockdown was that my energy was lower, as I'm sure a lot of people's were, and I didn't really know why. And it was the creator. It was the lack of ability to innovate, and actually, then that would really helped me. That because we started doing new things, we started doing courses online. We did an NLP diploma online. So I think that awareness of your values is so important. I actually went through a coaching exercise last week when we were training NLP because I had a bit of internal conflict between part of me wanting more meaning and more purpose and to be helping more people and making a bigger impact, and part of me wanted more free time to do my own thing in my own way. So it was actually as we know in the motivational mapping world, a search of spirit conflict, which isn't a classic one, but they're right at the top of my map. And I was definitely feeling pulled in two different directions. So I like everybody, motivation is can be a challenge at times. Like I say, I feel very privileged to wake up and do what I love, but there can be the downside of being such a high searcher is there can be a sense of responsibility, wanting to help people all the time. So it's been it's also been a gift that we are part of a coaching community, and I never really wanted that. I never set about trying to create a community. It was never something that was important to me at all. But actually, it's probably the thing I love the most now. We've got a conference on Friday with 40 people turning up, a mixture of speakers, James Sales speaking on motivation. And I just love the fact there's going to be an energy and a vibe, and we're going to have 40 people where I can unashamedly just be myself and share what I think. And because they're not, when you're in the personal development space, you tend to think differently to the vast majority of the population or a lot of the population. So there are circles that you operate in where you kind of feel like, or I certainly have, and maybe this is something for me to work on, kind of just dial it back a little bit in terms of what you might say to certain things. So I think for me in the last few years, certainly being able to if you like, be in touch with and have a community of people where I can just pick up the phone and we can go out as a group, have community events is so refreshing. Because the other part of running your own independent coaching and training business is it can be kind of you're on your own, which is actually why I did it. Because I wanted that, but the flip side is actually having people that are like-minded and with mutual values and beliefs around you is really supportive. So, so it's been I feel completely privileged to have been able to do what I love for the last 10 years, but it's still within that 10 years been a real journey of waxing and waning motivation with COVID and various different realizations at different times.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that awareness piece, I think, is something that a lot of people are still looking for, actually understanding why they're feeling the way they're feeling. You get in that funk of that you can feel the energy going out, but why? What is it? What's making the difference for you? And you being able to say, well, actually, that conflict between the searcher and the spirit be making a difference for others and actually doing stuff myself, I think can be quite a big one for a lot of people. That's that understanding, but it's okay to have those sort of feelings and then be able to have those conversations to start working it out. And it sounds like that's it. Obviously, from your awareness point of view, you're in a really great position to be able to do that. And when you're talking to people on a regular basis, you're even more heightened to hopefully to your own. Sometimes I feel, I know I get dragged down into it and I go, hang on, whoa, you're getting too in the weeds here. You need to get up and have a look at stuff. I don't know. Is that similar from your point of view?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really important. One of the things that I think I'm way better at now that has really helped me maintain motivation and enthusiasm levels is being coachable. I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, I had a bit of ego and identity around being the coach and being the trainer. And actually now I'll often find myself on an NLP training course and I'll end up participating some of the exercises and be coached by somebody who's doing a course for the first time. And I've got, and why wouldn't I? If I find something that needs a bit of attention, then it's worth exploring. So, and I think I learn a lot as well by witnessing and watching other trainers. I was trained by somebody who was clinically brilliant at what he did, but he wasn't necessarily. He definitely put himself on a pedestal, which then created issues further down the road. So I definitely think being coachable as a coach, I think we talk about it a lot, don't we, in the motivation circles. If you're coachable and you're able to accept help and support for other people, then why wouldn't you? And I think for the general population who perhaps haven't had much coaching or much support, I would just say do it. It can completely change your life, and you'll know pretty quickly. You'll know almost within 30, 45 minutes of the session whether this is going to work for you or not. You'll just know it. It's something, there's a real visceral feeling about it. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? It's that idea that, well, I've got a coach. Yeah, but are they the right coach for you? That coach sort of fit, isn't it? It's a critical part of it, because I distinctly remember my background's pharmaceutical industry as well. So, sit there with managers who have been on a coaching course for a couple of days and come back and then start coaching everybody, and it's like, this isn't going to work, I'm afraid. So it does make a big difference, doesn't it, in terms of how that lands? Yeah, absolutely. So from that coaching point of view, sort of moves us on a little bit, I suppose, to the NLP point of view. And for those people who are unaware of what NLP is, it would be great to get a little bit of a summary from you, just so people can understand what it is, and then how does that come into play with motivation then?
Yeah, good question. Just it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So apologies if I ramble on a little bit here.
Carry on.
So NLP is, firstly, it's the worst marketed thing ever, because neuro-linguistic programming, who on earth wants to be programmed? But effectively it explains about the mind, how we communicate, which is obviously the language side, which is verbal and non-verbal, and then of course the programming and actually the therapeutic and the coaching tools, because it is possible to change unconscious filters. So I describe NLP as helping people to consciously and unconsciously focus on what you want. Because of course we might be consciously focusing on what we want, but unconsciously we're carrying a bit of scar tissue that makes that difficult. And we get this lack of congruency where you want to go in that direction. And the classic one I would say is guilt, where, because I think everybody's experienced this, where you shouldn't feel guilty, but yet you do. So unconsciously somewhere there's some rules or there's some programming maybe passed down from the previous generation that makes it difficult to take time for yourself or to relax or to the amount of people I've given the task of meditating to, and then they struggle to just sit down and not do anything for 10 minutes, for example. So yeah, NLP is it's about becoming aware of those patterns that get in the way of us actually going out and being the best version of ourselves, and then letting go of them. So yeah, that's where NLP sits for me. And the link with motivation is around values.
Okay.
So we know in motivation that actually what motivates you or what motivates us is based on our values. So I have a value of golf, which means I spend time and energy focusing on. I played golf this morning. I spent time. It was a bit soggy out there, but I still played. So that there's time and energy that goes into golf. Now, some other people listening to this might go, "Well, I bloody hate golf." Or it's not. So it's not a value for them. So values are what motivate us. And whereas in our motivational mapping world, we have a motivational preference like spirit, which is around freedom and independence. In the NLP world, we would look at what's the value might be freedom. And then around the value, we'll have a number of beliefs. And those beliefs will either be enabling or disenabling. So beliefs, we're right either way. So what we effectively do in the NLP world is we elicit somebody's attitude. Money's a classic one, value of money. You could, around money, you could have the belief of money is the root of all evil, only crooks have money, or you could have beliefs around it which are money is just energy, money flows easily and effortlessly. And of course, you're having two very different attitudes associated with the same value. So yeah, for me, NLP and motivation are inextricably linked. Because the more you learn about NLP, the more it's actually possible to change values that aren't working for us, and therefore change our attitude. And I certainly had to do that around money because, as an example, I grew up in a working class area of Yorkshire, and to run a successful business, I had to completely change my mindset around money, and let go of some attachments actually that I wasn't aware of at the time, but have become aware of since.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And what sort of time frames are involved in all of this then? People were sitting out there going, brilliant, great, I can do this. It'll happen tomorrow, or will it take months, years? Are there sort of averages in terms of working with people around the values?
So yeah, so I think when we work with values on an NLP, so there's two routes. One is coaching and the other is training. So if you were to train as a practitioner, that's a 6.5 day course, and then master practitioner is a 9-day course. And you work with values on the master practitioner course where you learn how to elicit them. And that's where I fell in love with motivational maps, because it meant I didn't have to spend an hour and a half eliciting career values. And as a high spirit, that was really, really useful. So training wise, you can learn to work with and change, elicit and change unconscious values as a master practitioner of NLP. And the other side is working one-to-one with somebody. Now, when we have we've trained over 200 coaches in NLP over the years, and different people do different things. So my preference is to go on a deep journey with clients over the course of a year, and get a clear vision, a clear goal, elicit all the limiting beliefs, all of the internal conflicts, all of the scar tissue, all of the values that aren't in alignment with that goal, and then gradually over the course of a year work through and clean all that up so that we create alignment. I know some coaches that do that in a day, and it's what we call a personal breakthrough session, where you elicit all of that, help the client get clarity on their vision, and then spend a whole day working together to sweep everything up. And I have done that in the past, usually when chased by people, because it's a lot of work and a lot of energy goes into it, and is effective, probably not as effective as going on a longer journey with more gaps between the sessions, because awareness grows, as we both know. It's not just what happens in the coaching room, it's what happens in the gaps between the sessions. So yeah, that's where we work with values. As a master practitioner of NLP, we can learn how to help others with values, as well as having our own values listed and aligned, and the same with coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the NLP itself and that sort of motivational level, there sounds like there can be a lot of work involved in that, and it's conversations, etc. And you mentioned the language piece that's involved in NLP. The use of different types of language. What's the connection there with motivation? I mean, a lot of people saying, well, if I use a slightly different word, how might that impact my mood for the day?
Yeah.
Is it as simple as that?
So the best example I can give you is we worked and trained an action coach, very successful action coach recently, business coach, working with his clients, and he is using the meta model and the Milton model all of the time since the NLP practitioner course. He's already a successful coach, but the meta model helps us to uncover, because when we speak, we leave stuff out. It's impossible to say precisely what you're thinking. And obviously, if we're working with younger people, and any parents listening to this, if you've got kids, they'll say stuff. And of course, they've left huge amounts of information out, and they expect you to understand what they're saying, because they haven't got as much flexibility in language as we have. So we're always deleting, distorting, and generalizing. And NLP teaches how to find out what the real problem is using the meta model. I remember after my first ever training back in 2008, I remember going back into my management role, and the chef at my work was huffing and blushing, said, "Oh, there's no communication around here." And a younger version of me would have genuinely done 360-degree feedback on both sides, found out I would have put a load of, because I would have taken that personally. And actually, what NLP taught me was to spend a bit more time and just build a bit of rapport with them, say, look, who specifically isn't communicating with who? Which is a meta model question. And it turned out it was his wife.
Okay.
So he'd massively no communication around here. And actually, there was one person not communicating with him, which was his wife, who also worked in the organization. So I think a lot of time and energy is wasted solving problems that aren't problems.
Hello, hope you're enjoying this episode. When you've finished, why not subscribe to the Motivational Mindset Podcast to learn more about motivation in business and beyond. Thanks. Now, back to the podcast.
So that's where the meta model really helps. And then the Milton model is the basis of ambiguity and hypnotic language. And that helps us.
Isn't this the Jedi mind tricks? Are these is it as someone said that to me several times when I've been using from an NLP point of view, like, well, interesting. Maybe you can sort of to speak about that in terms of for the listeners out there. Is it tricks? Are you what's the word I'm looking for? Are you influencing people without their permission? How
So I think that this. Thank you for asking that, because there is such a misconception out there. So firstly, we're always influencing people with everything we say. So if we let go of the fact we're always influencing people anyway, the question is, are we influencing in a way in which is ecological and good for the person that we're speaking with? So there's a big part of NLP is ecology, in that the outcomes have to be good for the client and they have to be good for everybody involved. In general conversation, there are a few tricks out there. So if you tell your kid, I'll say to Aidan, try it when he says I can't sleep, I might say it's all right, try not to. If you try not to sleep, you're still focusing on sleep. And so we know that in hypnosis, the word try is used a lot. So if you think about also, again, parenting is a great angle. When we, as parents, how often have we told our kids what we don't want them to do? And we've just implanted a suggestion of what we don't want them to do. So whether you use don'ts or nots, whatever you say at the end, the suggestion that the individual moves towards. So don't think of a blue tree, we think of a blue tree before we don't think of one. So Milton model language really is about what used at its best. It's a vague, ambiguous language. Listened to any hypnosis CDs, any guided meditations, they're all using Milton model language.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody will tell you specifically what to do on a hypnosis program. And as Milton Erickson famously said, I want all my clients to do precisely what I want to do in any way in which they choose to do so. So it's about very ambiguous, non-threatening, non-direct, inducing a relaxed state that is helpful for the client in a hypnotic intervention. Or a lot of our NLPers don't really use it very much, apart from at the start of a session to help a client relax, or at the end of a session to leave them in a relaxed state, or at bedtime with your kids, just to help your children kind of settle down a little bit. So yeah, Milton model is great, especially also in negotiation sometimes, just to be able to just kind of get people out. You mentioned the weeds, to get people out of the weeds a little bit and find a level of ambiguity that people can agree on.
Okay. Oh, I see. There's loads of stuff in there, isn't there? You could go on forever. It's brilliant. I love it. And that sort of leads in as well, because we mentioned timeline therapy. So how does that work then? Is that part of NLP, or is it a different thing, or just another process within the NLP umbrella?
So it's another process within the NLP umbrella when trained through the ABNLP. So Tad James, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple of years ago, was the creator or the inventor of timeline therapy, and he was also the president of the ABNLP. So he created the ABNLP, which is the American Board of NLP. So if you're trained through that body, then you also have the option of becoming trained in timeline therapy. And it was that changed the course of my life, really. It's probably the personal development thing I'm most passionate about.
Yeah.
Even though it sits within an umbrella, because most people don't appreciate that it's possible to let go of emotional scar tissue from the past. So people feel often a bit stuck, and it absolutely is possible. And it's absolutely possible to heal and to move past those emotional events in the past. And I'm incredibly passionate about that, because I'm yet to meet a human being that to some degree would benefit from that. I didn't have loads of deep, dark, not very nice stuff happen to me, but I still had a healthy dose of scar tissue around my sports career, which before I had the belief I wasn't good enough based 2010 felt quite heavy, and I didn't really know why. I didn't really know why I was feeling uncomfortable, but that was a big part of it. So yeah, to answer your question, timeline therapy is a way of letting go of emotions and beliefs quickly, quickly and safely.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like there's lots of different tools, processes that are usable within that NLP umbrella to help people in whatever way they require. But I'm sure that impact on the motivated state as well is really good. That mindset that we're coming out with, you can get rid of the baggage. There's that lighter feeling, that ability to move forward and not be dragged back by it. So that mental and that mindset state's a really great place to be in. And that's really quite interesting, because that brings me on really nicely. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who've tuned in because of the reference to golf that's already come out. I mean, the cricket side of things is really interesting as well. From a mindset point of view, you've got to be. It's a game. You've got to have that right mindset. Otherwise, you're not playing for 80 minutes or whatever it is, 90 minutes. You're playing for a long time. Same with the golf side of things. So. How clearly you have been a sportsman, you play cricket, play golf. How's that turned into something that you love doing from a work point of view? What happened there?
Great question. So yeah, I mean, originally when I first started, so if I think right back, where did it start? Well, it started after my master practitioner course in 2010. Two things happened. One, I went to the driving range and I applied some of the things I'd learned about strategies, and found that what had happened on that course around belief and some of those old things had disappeared, and my handicap came down from 13 to 8 without really doing anything other than applying what I'd learned. At that point, actually, I needed some technical help to get better. So that got me curious. Hang on a minute. All I've done is been on a 9-day course and my handicap's come diving down because of a psychological shift and a bit more awareness. So that got me curious. And at the same time, one of the tasks on my breakthrough session, which is at the end of the Master course, you have a breakthrough, you deliver one and you receive one. One of the tasks my coach gave me was to go out and do something I wouldn't otherwise have done. And what I did was I booked in on an inner game of golf workshop at Hemmingford Golf and Conference Centre. And I listened to Jamie do a fantastic presentation for about 3 hours with a break in between. And after about 10 minutes, I started thinking, oh, if I was him, I'd do this. And then he did. And then I thought, oh, if I was him next, I'd do this. And then he did. And what I realized was he was applying the NLP breakthrough methodology to golf. And Jamie Donaldson, who I've now just recently set up a business with, we might come on to that. He was hosting the event. There were 80 people in the room paying 40 to £50 a head. So the builder motivation at the time, the motivation around money, I also looked around the room and went, hang on a minute, there's a market here. There's a need, there's a demand, and I'd really like this. So I went to speak to Jamie, and Jamie said he was a bit dismissive because he knew me as Bevis Leisure Centre manager and somebody I teach golf. I'd said to him, look, there's 80 people in the room that need help. Jamie's going to be flying around the world doing his stuff. He's not going to be on hand. And he then referred somebody to me who got the yips with chipping. And without going into detail, I helped this individual overcome the yips with chipping. He then actually digressed massively. He ended up designing our website because he went on a career journey. That's a very different story. So yeah, that gave me a load of confidence. And really, if I try, it's funny how business is about relationships, because Jamie, we've now partnered together running a golf business called nypgolf.co.uk, which is a golf online program for amateur golfers. We're launching the next program on the 8th of April. So we're excited by that. And also a lot of Jamie referred a chap called Matt Tipper to me 9 years ago. He's Adrian Maronk's coach. He's also just been voted European Coach of the Year. And that's been a really long coaching journey with him over the last 9 years. I now consider him a good friend. And 5 years ago, he referred Adrian Maronk to me. So I've been working with Adrian for 5 years, from Challenge Tour, 1500th in the world, now to top 40 in the world, and obviously now on Live. So really, it's not been particularly strategic. All I would say is it's just been based on good relationships, helping the people that have been put in front of me, and enjoying it, really. And again, now we've got a number of clients that I work with, professional golfers I work directly with. We've also got a couple of associate coaches who are working with other professional golfers and elite golfers. And we now are developing, as I mentioned, the online product, which is for amateur golfers, because there's so little out there. It's amazing. So little out there to help people mentally or psychologically with golf. And therefore, so many people are finding their hobby frustrating and disappointing.
Yeah, which is not good, because from a motivational point of view, that's where they're getting energy from, isn't it? And if they can't get as much energy from that, then yeah, what can they do? Here's a quick question for you. And if anybody's listening who isn't into the golf side of things, could you explain the yips?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, that is one of the downsides, isn't it, of both golf and NLP? There's lots of jargon. So yeah, the yips is effectively when this particular chap, a young lad actually named Chris, who played off 5, he was a good golfer. He technically had no issue with his chipping. Jamie kept saying to me, "There's no problem with chipping. His chipping's technically perfect." But when it came to actually playing on the course, he couldn't execute the skill. So he would find some way through the stroke, he'd kind of feel an unconscious movement or tension, which would get in the way of him. And he would, in golf, we have the term called fat it. He would hit the floor before the ball.
Yeah.
And the solution was actually quite simple, because his putting routine, what he did in his mind mentally for putting, was the best. I remember the first session, I said to him, "What's the best bit of your game?" He went, "Putting." I went, "Great, let's go have a look at that." He goes, "Why are you looking at putting? The problems, I've got a problem with putting." Well, I know. And we elicited the sequence of thought, an unconscious thought he had for putting, and taught him to do that for chipping.
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
rocket science. It's just
Yeah.
knowing, having that awareness.
Hmm.
Because what he was doing, the moment he missed the green, he was saying to himself in his mind, "I've got to get up and down. I've got to get up and down." By the time he got to the ball, his state had gone. He was
Yeah.
frustrated, worried already.
Mm.
So yeah.
That's quite interesting the way that happens, because I think the yips have quite a big part to play in a lot of business side of things, isn't there? It's particularly with smaller businesses, when you enjoy and you're good at certain parts of it. Maybe it's the business development, maybe it's the actual running of courses or whatever service you do, but there's other things that really, do I have to, and immediately your mindset has impacted and your motivation has dropped for that particular exercise or that particular activity or whatever it is. So it's really interesting to say from a sort of a top tip point of view. It sounds like, if you've got something to focus on what you're good at and look at why you're good at that, and take that into, how does that make you feel, why, when you're doing that, and then when that moves into the things that you're not quite as comfortable with, we can start to change that side of things. Sounds really simple, this, Bevis. Why aren't people good at golf?
Well, I think part of the issue is like you say, it's awareness, isn't it? That there was an unconscious issue, and if it's unconscious,
Yeah.
then you can't do anything about it until it becomes conscious. So I've got a mate who's got 33 putters. Clearly,
33.
33. So, I mean, I joke glibly, it's probably not 33, it's probably 12. But clearly, the solution isn't another putter. There's something and until that person, there's stubbornness can be a great trait in
Yeah.
sport, but it can also be a huge weakness in certain areas.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yes, I've got several friends who buy a new driver every year, because this is the one that will make the difference. Here we
Yeah.
go. Yeah. And it does. It makes a massive difference how far outside of the boundary the ball goes,
Yeah.
which is what I find.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Thanks very much for that little insight into the golf side of things. So you mentioned, and as we come towards the end of our conversation here, you mentioned, you've got this MYP golf, and that's for the sort of the amateur side of things. How can people? You mentioned the website and online side of things.
Yeah.
How does it work for people?
So the nice thing is it's literally hot off the press. We did our first launch in December, so we've had 16 golfers that I'd never heard the phrase beta test, but we beta tested it with 16 golfers and got some great results. So we've got our second launch. So we're launching it fully on the 8th of April. The webinar's at 7 p.m. I'll share a link with you. So if people are interested in that and they want to access that, then they can access that, or they can have a look at MYP Golf, which is obviously our website, with further information on there as well.
Fantastic. I know I've got, as I mentioned, quite a few friends who spend their time wandering around looking for small white golf balls are all over the place. So it may be of interest to them, definitely. And even me, every now and again when I make it onto a golf course, I think it'd be quite good.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, from that sort of motivational mindset point of view, there's a lot of awareness from your point of view, and thank you for sharing your journey there, particularly around that sort of early sporting impact that's had on motivation. And that's quite interesting. I think hopefully a lot of people who are listening starting to think back and go, okay, where might my scar tissue, as you put it, be, and how can I look at that in a way that enables me to move forward? And there's lots of coaching and opportunities to look into that, which is great. I ask this of all of my all of my guests. So if there is one, and again, I know there's lots and lots out there, but what's the one thing that you as a sort of a top tip you could share with the listeners around that, their motivation, that you feel would be a benefit to them going forward?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think motivation is about energy. So motivation is about energy. So it's about being aware of our energy. And I think the thing is top tips are difficult because everybody's different.
Yeah.
So, but what I would say is look at what drains your energy. So, for example, my old pattern was of anxiety. And as soon as I learned NLP, I realized that, hang on, the anxiety isn't out there. It's not to do with any other people. So my biggest tip, the biggest thing that I think can start to make the difference to people is to realize the mind is more of a projector than a receiver. When we've got 2 million bits of information being processed through we're deleting, distorting, and generalizing, we're left with a picture in our mind that we act as if is real. So if we're feeling anxious, it's not because an event is scary, although it feels it. Mm-hmm. It's because we have a picture in our mind linked with sounds and feelings of that event. So if we're feeling anxious, we're imagining something going wrong.
Yeah.
So if we know that that whatever's draining our energy is linked to the picture in our mind, then we become conscious of that, then we can start to do something different. And just being conscious of that helps, because it's like, okay, this is the time to breathe then, or to become present. Then that will help consciously. Obviously, sometimes with things like phobias, you need deeper help, because whatever you do consciously, we're still scared of spiders.
Yeah.
For the vast majority of human conditions, there's very few human conditions that don't improve with a bit more awareness and a few relaxing belly breaths.
Fantastic. You've heard it here. That's a nice top tip there. Thank you very much to end on, Bevis. It's fantastic to have had you on and to hear all about Magenta and your golf side of things. Wish you all the luck in the world with that, and
thank you.
No doubt we will hear more about how that goes on. But for now, Bevis, thank you very much, and see you again. This was a Switch Motivation production from Switch Performance Limited. Music by Dennis Kischuk from Pixabay, the Motivational Mindset Podcast. Download, listen, subscribe.